Welcome to the Pennsylvania Municipal League's 2025 Winter Lunch and Learn webinar series. Today, we're fortunate to have one of our strong partners, Constellation Energy, here with us. Included in their team is Matt Shortle. He is their Senior Business Development Manager. We have Melissa Raymond, and she is their Association Manager. And we're pleased to also have Mr. Bill Sticka. He's the principal in the Commodities Management Group. They're going to discuss some energy strategies. We all know that the increasing cost of electricity and energy right now is certainly a budget concern. And they have partnered with us for many years, and they have some great tips and concepts for you to listen to. And on April 3rd, we'll have another webinar that we would ask that you consider attending. This will be a webinar for sustainability tools by Constellation Navigator, another team from Constellation, and it will discuss the plethora of solutions that they have to help you navigate your sustainability goals in your community. So with that, I will turn it over to the Constellation team. I appreciate all of you being here and I appreciate your engagement with the
conference call.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Chris. We appreciate the.
I mean, you just said I live in Eagle Rock, and
If everyone could mute, thank you. Well, Chris, again, thank you for the introduction. Obviously, Constellation has been a longtime partner of the Pennsylvania Municipal League. I am Matt Shortle. I am unfortunately fighting some of the respiratory illness that has been going around Pennsylvania over the last month or so. So I will be limited in how much you want to hear me talk, so I don't cough too much during this time. As Chris said, I'm joined by longtime coworkers Bill Sticka and Melissa Raymond. We're going to go through a little bit of who Constellation is, just as a reminder. What the MUA program is, and what the overall market is doing. As Chris mentioned, electricity prices and different components continue to rise, and we understand the impact that has on your municipal budgets. So we're going to talk through some, how we've gotten to where we are currently and where we're going to be headed towards in the future, we predict, and some different strategies around procurement from there. So if you're already feeling a little bit stressed, about energy rates and things like that, I just want to show you what 17 years, of Constellation Energy. No, I'm just kidding. So this is actually, I just had my 17th anniversary here at Constellation on Monday, and I was able to find this picture of a much younger, a little bit more hair, Matt from that day. So I would like to think that maybe we can keep some of the stress and some of those worry lines off of you guys. So from here, I'm going to turn it over to Melissa. I'm going to sip my tea, and I will be watching the chat. So if you have any questions or anything that you want to bring up, please drop a note in there or raise your hand, and we can go from there.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it. Thanks, everyone, for being here. Like Matt said, we'll just do a brief introduction to Constellation if you're not familiar. Constellation is number one in market share for C&I customers, number two retail electricity provider, and serves 3/4 of the Fortune 100. We are the number one producer of carbon-free 24/7 energy in the United States, the lowest carbon emissions and carbon intensity generator in the United States, and the largest nuclear operator in the United States. We have over 14,000 employees nationwide, and we're investing in local communities through $215 million in local property taxes and $93 million in state payroll taxes. And something to note, since the reopening of Crane Clean Energy Center, we will have 3,400 direct and indirect jobs in Pennsylvania. So something to note there. This is just a quick overview of our generation assets. And as you can see here, a large portion of our assets are in Pennsylvania and the Mid-Atlantic region. You can see the dots there, and they're identified and color-coded based on the energy source. Feel free to stop me at any time. I'm going to go through these pretty quickly because we have a lot of information to share. So Constellation and the Municipal Utility Alliance partnership started in 2009, and Constellation has been the endorsed energy supplier since then. The MUA is open to all local government entities in Pennsylvania, and it meets Pennsylvania public bidding requirements. We also offer 100% green energy, carbon-free options to meet sustainability goals. We also offer fixed price contracts for budget certainty and no penalties for change in usage. We also offer energy market webinars and blog posts and other educational resources to help you make your choice for energy. And just something to note, we serve over 220 communities currently in Pennsylvania, and our annual usage is just over 283 million kilowatt hours annually. So we'll just briefly talk electricity supply. Effectively managing your energy purchasing strategy involves considering various factors such as market conditions, budget constraints, risk tolerance, regulatory changes, and market fundamentals. By taking a comprehensive approach and evaluating all these aspects, you can make an informed decision that aligns with your financial goals and risk management preferences. Leveraging accurate data and insight, you can optimize your energy strategy, ensuring that you are well equipped to handle market fluctuations and achieve your financial goals. And finally, by working together, you can create a clear plan and take actionable steps towards minimizing your environmental impact. This approach ensures that your efforts are aligned with your sustainability objectives and contribute to a greener future. Now let's talk about the electricity cost and the components that are bundled. So if you break it down, we have supply, which is the power generation, transmission, and then we have distribution and the end user. Transmission is the higher voltage system that carries electricity from generators to distribution centers. And then the distribution is the lower voltage system that carries the electricity from distribution to customer. This breaks down for you where the costs are coming from for your electricity. Electricity costs can be broken down into several key components. Understanding these components can help municipalities better manage their electricity expenses. Here are the primary components. Energy, which is the actual generation. Capacity is determined by the price set from the regional transmission organization. Transmission, which we discussed on the last slide. Renewable portfolio standards, known as RPS. It's mandates set by individual states for load serving entities to purchase a certain amount of renewable energy. Ancillaries and line loss. Do we have any questions so far? Understanding your electricity contract is crucial for managing your energy usage and bill effectively. Your contract should clearly outline which components are fixed or variable, who bears the risk of usage variations, and how these variations are accounted for. Constellation is dedicated to being a leading supplier of energy and energy services. We offer a range of products to meet various budgetary and risk management needs. Our contracts are designed to be transparent and easy to understand, empowering you to manage your energy budget effectively. I'm going to now pass it on to Bill to talk about the market update.
All right, thank you, Melissa. Appreciate being here. I'm Bill Sticker, part of our commodities management group. So I'll be going over the market kind of end of this. As you saw in Melissa's pie chart, the biggest portion of that bill was the electricity bill, was the actual commodity. And that's what we track quite a bit all day, every day within our group to get that information out to you, the customer, ultimately, and our BDM staff. And what we look at from an electricity standpoint, what you see on that portion of the bill is a very high correlation between natural gas and electricity. So where traditionally where natural gas had moved, electricity was soon to follow. And that's still very much the case, even though we're starting to see more divergence because all of a sudden reliability issues on the power side are becoming more and more a risk on the power in the price from a pricing standpoint and a risk management standpoint. They still are very highly correlated. So we look at natural gas very closely, and as you say, natural gas, this balance is something that's moving constantly. So when this balance between supply and demand on the natural gas side is balanced, prices stay stable and they stay somewhat fair value. When it leans in one direction or the other, just like any other product, prices either will be supported or will be resisted. Back in 2022, we saw power prices and natural gas and power prices go through the roof, and that's because natural gas prices were very volatile back then. And that's because the supply portion of this was lagging the demand portion. The Ukraine war had started. We started maximizing all our exportability of natural gas, and production was slow coming out of that winter to respond. And prices kind of went through the roof and were very volatile that year. We finally caught up that fall from a production standpoint, supply standpoint, and demand. And then we had two very warm winters. So the last couple of years, we've seen tempered prices, particularly on the natural gas side, because this balance has shifted really from being driven by demand to being oversupplied and driven by on the supply side. That this winter being a normal to colder than normal winter has kind of regulated that oversupply. We've seen a lot of that oversupply come out due to increased heating demand. So right now, prices are kind of going up and away again. Last year at this time, natural gas prices for prompt month, which is the next month, was priced around 192. It's now, as of today, like over 450. That's a huge jump. And that's what the shift in the supply and demand can do. Okay. Okay, so just a couple things. Again, these are all things that would affect that balance. But right now, we're coming out of a winter that was colder than the 30-year normal from a heating degree day standpoint. That PWHDD, that's population weighted heating degree days. So it's just a level of temperature demand. Colder than the 30-year normal, colder than the 10-year normal. So it was cold. We rely on gas coming out of storage quite a bit to tweak high demand for natural gas during the wintertime. We took out a lot more gas this year than we have the last couple of years. And we went from a surplus in that storage inventory to a pretty significant deficit leaving this winter. That will all have to be backfilled between April and October so we have enough supply going into the following winter. And the markets look at this stuff all day, every day, every week, in which gas is injected and where they think that we're going to be come next winter. So we're kind of starting at a very quite a deficit, and so we have our work cut out for us as far as how much gas has to go in there. We saw prices again surge over $4 due to cold temperatures. All-time high LNG is liquid natural gas demand, so that's exporting gas on ships, liquefying it and exporting it. That's at all-time highs. We saw production earlier drop low due to freeze-offs associated with a cold winter. That's kind of bounced back, and we're back to record highs But record highs isn't enough right now because of the amount of gas we have to pull out of storage as well. LNG exports, again, we've never exported more gas than we are right now. And from now to the end of the decade, we're going to see liquid natural gas plants being developed and constructed and finished, where our ability to export is going to almost double, not from the 16, more from like the 12, 14 level, but we're going to see a whole lot more gas demand coming down the pike over the next, 5 to 6 years. And you have some of these new facilities coming online. The Trump administration on the 14th of February basically granted a conditional LNG export permit for this LNG plant, which is about 1.2 BCF a day, in which it could deliver. The importance of that is he's kind of pushing back on the moratorium that the previous administration put on the advancement of more LNG facilities, and he's calling for a rapid approval of these licenses after that year-long moratorium. So that's going to continue, potentially see a further wave beyond this next wave, which should be completed by the end of the decade. And lastly, Pennsylvania forward prices are up 5% over the past year. We're going to see one of the portions on that pie chart was a PJM capacity price. That's been a hot button issue because of, and we don't have enough time to really go into it too much, but long and short of it is the last auction that they ran, which determines your capacity prices from June of this year to May of the following year, were at all-time highs. So they were basically at all-time lows, and then they jumped to all-time highs. We'll talk a little about what the capacity market does, but the capacity market is basically an auction in which they're trying to ensure that there's going to be enough electricity online during that planning year, and they put a price on it. It's supposed to be an incentive for generators to participate in it and also potentially build new plants as a result of the prices, because it's a payment to the generator. So those prices have gone up exponentially higher, and they're trying to work out different aspects of it so there's better transparency and efficiency going forward. Okay, next slide. All right, so this is prompt month gas. This is what I kind of told you about. This is a contract that's a month in advance. So right now, this chart would be settling each day at a price for the April contract, because we're now in March. It's always 1 month forward. But as you can see, last year at this time, we're sitting at 192. That when I did this slide, it was at 415. As of today, it's up over 455. So it continues to climb exponentially higher. Whereas the previous 2 years, we've been sitting in the $2-3 range, even below $2. So it's really moving up higher because of these bullish factors in the market that has basically caused that demand part of the scale to weigh heavier on that side. Okay. This is a 12-month looking strip. So instead of 1 month, it's 12 months. This goes back 5 years, but you can see where we were. And then I told you about the 2022 year where production supply lagged demand and some of the reasons for that. So that was the result. We saw extreme volatility. Prior to that and after that, we've been tracking well below the 5-year average. And that's because supply was really driving that balance. It was weighed heavily on the supply side. It really hasn't breached that point. 2022, obviously it did, but it really hasn't breached that point until now. And you can see at the very end of this chart, that 12-month looking strip, so that's further out, has gone up much higher than the 364 and pushing even $5 at this point. Okay. All right, so flipping over to power, I just took the various zones in Pennsylvania. PPL is a zone in PJM, which is part of Pennsylvania Utilities. So this is a forward curve that's taken a year ago. It's the same forward curve, so it starts the balance of 2025 all the way through 2029. This is what you would get your electricity portion of the bill off of. That's that electricity block that you saw on the pie chart. And this is just taken 2 different snapshots. One's currently in the orange, and then where it was a year ago. You could see a year ago, because we were swimming in gas and we were oversupplied, the front end of that price really dipped. And we call this a contangoed market. sloping upward, at least on the front of this. But you could see now a year later, the whole front of that has moved up, and that's because we're short gas. Now demand is driving thing, and production and the supply has worked through the system. Now it's been bid up because of demand, and that's why you see the shift from the real low price in the 42, 43 range up to the 49 range. And then the whole curve becomes more backwardated in the yellow, which means downward sloping. So as you can see, the front end of this curve particularly has moved up quite a bit. Okay. So this is Pico around the Philadelphia area, another zone in PJM. But these are how calendar strips have traded over the last 3 years. As you can see, overall, over the last 3 years, they've been trending downward. You see the various volatility coming out of the last 2 winters. You can see where those contracts kind of spread a little bit. That was the volatility. But as you can see, before then, the market was really oversold, dipped quite a bit, and then kind of bounced back and then settled back out. It did it two times in a row. And then you see where we are right now. But overall, it's been trending downward. But if you took a tighter move of that over the past 6 to 8 months, it's definitely trending more upward. Okay. If you compare index prices, so index, if you fix something, you're fully fixed if you fix something, you're fixing it in the Ford futures market. If you only fix a portion of that or don't fix any of that, the price that you would be receiving is what they refer to as index settlement. It's basically what the day ahead market clears at. So, the generators bid into the market, the load bids into the market, and wherever the supply and demand cross each hour determines a price, for that hour in the day ahead market. That's really the physical, actually flowing market, and where the price is clear. That's represented here in the blue. So you can see over the last 10 or 11 years that price has been about 40.83. The last 5 years has been quite a bit lower, that minus 2022, the year of all that volatility. But what you can see here is right now the futures forward markets, the 25 through 29, are trading at a considerable premium to where the last couple of years have been clearing, 30.51, 32.03, and where the futures are being offered. You're looking at, they're being offered almost $20 higher than where they cleared at the last couple of years. But that's because gas prices were low those 2 years. Index prices usually are determined by spot gas prices, and spot gas prices have been very low. Right now, they're considerably high, and that's really driving the futures. And then if you look at the forward power, as we talked about, there's a lot of concern about reliability issues. All this data center and AI growth that you're seeing on the power side, there's coming into question is, do we have enough electricity to meet this rapid growth forecasting for around the data centers? And when there's uncertainty in the market, there's going to be a risk premium put on those futures prices to cover that risk. And that's why you're seeing these prices quite a bit higher than where the index prices have cleared. Okay. Then lastly, we always get, not lastly, but we always get a question of when's a good time to buy during a calendar year. So this red line represents basically 11 years of a forward-looking strip. So basically every point on this curve, a chart represents a 12-month looking strip for gas, for PJM power. What we did was take the 11 years and boiled them down to this one curve. So this basically every data point here represents a 11-year settlement price for a 12-month looking strip forward. And the takeaway really is the best time to buy is typically in Q1. That's when prices tend to be lowest, as you can see at the beginning of this curve, and the end of Q4, as prices for whatever reason, even though it's in a premium month, as we move through winter, the risk becomes less and less. And a lot of times that's what the sell-off in Q1 represents, is eventually they sell the winter off, and that's when you see prices start declining. So from a strategy standpoint, when's the best time to buy? I'm not saying it's the only time, or the only time there's opportunities, but typically more times than not, Q1 is the time to do that. Okay. This is just some of the data that represents all the different power regions and gas strips as well. But what the green and yellow represent is these are all the low prices for the year, for each one of those years. And as you can see, a good 70 to 100% of the time in most of these regions, it was the low was hit either in Q4 or Q1. Okay. Okay, you can move through this. I think it's kind of animated. There you go. One more. Okay, so basically the hot button issue right now, what's really driving things on the power side is this the electric load growth associated with AI and data centers and cloud space and all that. And as you can see on this chart, over the last 20 years, electricity load growth usage only really grew anywhere from 1 to 2% year over year. It wasn't until the last couple years that the data center aspect seemed to catch everybody out by surprise as far as the growth forecasts went. And they've changed quite a bit, even over the past year or so. They just continue to move exponentially higher, and that's because a lot of the Amazon, Googles of the world, Apples are looking to build these data centers. They're building them. They're agnostic to price. They just want access to electricity, and that's why you hear in the news various things going on as far as these data centers sprouting up right near where there's generation. They have access to generation. So now, all of a sudden, we have this hockey stick movement up of projected load growth between now and the end of the decade and even beyond that. So now, all of a sudden, the onus is on, and you can't just create a data center, create a generator inside of 6 months to a year. It takes planning, it takes access to transmission lines and interconnections and all that. So now PJM's really trying to fast track generation. They're trying to fast track transmission and interconnection rights and everything to make sure that there's enough electricity to meet demand. And some of the areas that are really prevalent is Northern Virginia and PA, but Northern Virginia is like the mecca for this data center growth. Dallas and parts of Texas and Atlanta are really sprouting up quite a bit because of the access to electricity. Okay. These are some of the areas where you're talking about when they say gigawatts, that's 30,000 megawatts of generating of load that's going to be added because of various things. A lot of it having to do with data centers, but also industrial and manufacturing centers, electrification. But you see the different areas and where a lot of it, Texas, 43 gigawatts, Atlanta, 13, PJM in Northern Virginia, particularly 30 gigawatts. So that's where a lot of electricity load is sprouting up. Okay. And this again is just another way of showing it, but you could see this past year how the utility power demand from data centers is growing. On that chart, it just kind of moves up exponentially higher, and you can see where the forecasts are moving forward between now and the end of the decade. Texas is leading the way. They added 8.8 gigawatts of power usage for cryptocurrency mining, traditional lease data centers, and hyperscale data center operators, like we talked about, Amazon, Microsoft, Google. Northern Virginia came in second, adding 7 gigawatts for various things as well associated with data centers. And these utilities are starting to dump billions of dollars, and you can see the increases in the 5-year capital plan with Southern Company, $14 billion to $63 billion. Exelon Corporation stated they plan to spend $9.1 billion in 2025 and $38 billion over the next 4 years. And that's to build the infrastructure. That's to build the infrastructure to be able to meet this demand. Okay. And then lastly, these are PJM's load forecasts, but you could see prior and then forecasted. And the blue and green lines basically represent year over year change in their forecast. So you could see it was kind of trudging along over the past number of years, like we talked about. And then all of a sudden, over the last couple of years, we went from the blue line moving up considerably. And then a year later, the forecast changed to the green line. And it's probably going to continue to change on an upward path moving forward. So this is really the hot button issue, and it it presents a lot of risk for people trying to buy electricity, because we're going to see a lot of demand come online, and the onus is really going to be on generators to be able to meet that demand. And as you can see with some of the prices I showed you in the forward market, that's what's really elevating some of the offer prices on the electricity side. So you should employ strategies in which you can kind of mitigate your risk through that period, because this is a moving object for sure, and it's going to be somewhat of a wild ride most likely. Okay, that's all I have.
Great, thanks, Bill.
You bet.
Definitely a ton of information out there, and I'll ask again, as Melissa did earlier, if there's any questions, obviously feel free to raise your hand or drop them in the chat, and we can address that. As Bill has illustrated, there's a ton going on in the energy markets. At the end of the day, I don't expect you to have to follow everything that we're following here, on our side of how we're getting to, the fixed pricing and the different, option pricing, et cetera, that we give to the MUA clients. So we'll just walk through a couple of the buying strategies of how you can control your cost in all of these, extremely volatile, projected to grow, time periods. A lot of our customers, especially in the municipal world, are coming out of really longer term contracts. So 3, 4, 5-year contracts. If you signed a contract in your municipality back in 2020, you're still paying probably in the 5 to 6 cent range per kilowatt hour. That's probably half of where the current utility rates are, depending upon where you are in the Commonwealth. I just had a PP&L customer the other day they were coming out of a contract at 4.8 cents. The utility tariff is close to 12 cents per kilowatt hour. So the savings that you're seeing right now on these longer term contracts are immense. But the problem is, unfortunately, there's going to be some budget shock. There's going to be some sticker shock, as we're looking at forward at some of the different pricing. All these components have come up considerably, during that time period. So you have the blessing and the curse of, we were under long-term contracts. There's been significant savings, budget certainty. But when you come out of that, you might be faced with a 60, 70, 100% increase, on your next agreement, which would still show you savings versus, going back to the utility tariff rates. So there's a lot of different strategies that we can employ, for all customers. The vast majority of our municipal customers do stick to the left side of this slide, a fixed price. Traditionally, we set that for a budget perspective. Give you like I said, a 3, 4, 5-year deal at a fixed rate per kilowatt hour, and then we can. Then that shifts all of that management of concern and risk, et cetera, to us as a supplier of all those things that Bill was talking about. All the day ahead markets, all of the capacity, on the grid system, the increasing generation load, et cetera. All shifts, away. You don't have to worry about that, because you do have that fixed price for that term. Now, as we've seen the extreme, volatility in the markets and some of the high prices, and one of my favorite slides that Bill had was showing the index market versus the fixed, forward curves, because there is concern on the market of, are the forward years, are they too expensive? Will the current administration bring them down? Will power plants come online over the next, X number of years? Will these data centers not show up? There's all the different conversations and questions that, we don't have crystal balls. We can't answer specifically, at this time, to say exactly where that market will be. We know where it's trading. We know where it has been, et cetera. But we do have strategies that allow you to use, kind of take both, mindsets. You can do a fixed portion of your contract, and we can do an index portion of your contract to blend those two purchasing strategies together, to help you minimize the cost. And also another issue that, it helps address is really the budget, the market timing. Bill's slides about the 11-year averages of, when it makes sense to purchase. Every year can be different, every month can be different. So as we're going forward, to say your next board meeting is next Tuesday at 7 p.m. and that's going to be the best time to buy power in the next 3 years, we have no way of knowing that. But being able to take multiple bites of that apple, and we'll walk through in a couple slides of how we do that, allows to reduce some, give you a little bit more diversification in your purchases to help, level out some of that budget. Next slide, Melissa. So this is where, again, most of the, municipal clients that we have through the MUA are on a fixed price, and it does just that. You can see the orange line through all of the market iterations of increases and decreases. Fixed price prevents you from seeing a high month impact your bill. It also prevents a lower month, on the market from you benefiting from it. But it gives you a simple strategy to cover your kilowatt hours, for the entire load, which, as Melissa walked through earlier in the presentation, one of the benefits of the MUA is never having to worry about a bandwidth, with your agreement. So when we talk about that, it means how many kilowatt hours are you using on a monthly basis, on an annual basis, et cetera. So if you do an energy efficiency project, or if you expand town, city hall, so if your usage goes up, it goes down, we're going to absorb all of that risk as part of the program for you, which a lot of suppliers don't. There's usually a 10% bandwidth, actually, so it's a relatively narrow margin, that if you fall outside of that, then there's penalties, et cetera. So we're still encouraging you to be as energy efficient as possible, reduce your consumption, from a sustainability standpoint. It's something that we're very, impassioned about as well. But so this the fixed price, gives you that set it and forget it, like the old infomercial used to joke about, with the little meat cookers on the counter. We decide on a term, we decide on a price, we decide, how all the different components will be handled. We fix them. And that extends on for, 24 months, 36 months, 60 months, whatever the term that makes sense for your community. The other option, next slide, Melissa, is that more flexible solution, which blends those together. So what this product allows us to do is kind of give you the best of both worlds. We can take, and I always use the term bites of the apple, of locking in certain percentages. So let's say it's 25% of your load, but you need to be 100% locked in by, a certain day for a certain date for next year's budget. So we can schedule that to make 4 different 25% purchases based upon where the market's trending, what we're seeing, impacts, et cetera, to then, give you a blended rate of those 4 purchases for that 100% lock-in. So you can still have your budget certainty. You can still have, all the benefits from that fixed price, but it reduces the concern that we're doing it at the wrong time. If there's, as you can see on this chart, the market continues. It's the same market that we show on the fixed price. Of it going up and down throughout the year over the course of a year or two. So by making these varied and differentiated purchases, we allow you get to a blended price, and we can do that either from a manual perspective of you and I would talk about where the market is, what the price is on the, for energy at that time, and what percentage we want to lock in. Or there is a program that we have called MVP, which is minimize volatile pricing, which actually uses an algorithm to purchase automatically on your behalf. Excuse me, I almost moved it. Purchase automatically on your behalf, based upon where the market is and standard deviations against a mean. So it purchases more if the market's low, and it purchases less if the market's high, but still getting you to your percentage that you want to be fixed by your certain point of time. And that a lot of customers really like that because it gives you the opportunity, without having to do all the work, of a quarterly meeting or anything of that nature. Next slide. So as we're going through, all of this, Constellation is going to provide you with as much information as you want, as much information as you need to make these decisions. I have some customers who don't even want to see multiple terms. They just tell me to, show me whatever the best term is and what you guys think is right. And I have customers who want to see 5 different terms with, every different product and different pass-throughs and everything else. So we're gonna customize what we're offering to you based upon what you would like to see and how best we can, help educate you as you're going through this process. We really do. I know I made kind of a corny joke to start off about, the stress of energy, but we do try to reduce your stress and your impact, of that on you. We have various tools that we're not going to have time to go through all of them today, but our Market Watch program can provide you with up to daily updates on where your contracts are, versus the market. So a lot of my customers will use that when they're looking at their renewals. So let's say your contract's up in December of 2025. You don't necessarily need to make a decision today, but you want to start thinking about that and seeing where it's going to be, from a planning perspective. So the Market Watch, whether it's every day or once a week or however you want to structure it, we can show you where the current market is versus your current agreement. And that's if you're with us currently or not, we can get that set up to to show you that differential, and then obviously it gives us some good information that once we hit certain points, if we get to your contract price or you say, hey, if I can be within 10% of my current contract, I want to move forward. It gives us that daily information and allows it to be automated. Our I2I program, which stands for Information to Implementation, allows you to have access to a full array of budget prediction, information. It looks at, again, the projected budget based upon your hedging strategy. So if we went with a less than 100% fixed, what's the projected, high end and low end of your budget? So it just gives, again, while it's easy for us to talk about, X number of cents per kilowatt hour, we understand that when you go to put your budgets together, that's not what goes in. It's, I'm spending $100,000, I'm spending $1 million, whatever the number is on power each year, so it makes it a little more tangible to see, okay, here's my range of where we think this is going to come in based upon historical factors. Our peak alerts and peak response program is really something that I'm encouraging customers, especially as these capacity rates are going up. Your capacity cost for each individual customer is actually set based upon your peak load contributions for each account. So every summer there's 5 hours on the grid system that are the highest usage levels in your zone. And then your usage during those 5 hours then sets what they call your peak load contribution, which impacts not only your supply bill, but also your distribution bill, from whether it's, PP&L, PICO, Pedelec, Duquesne, et cetera. So what we're able to do is based upon, the weather, based upon, our usage that we're seeing from our generation facilities, et cetera, we're able to actually put out warnings, that or alerts the day before that say we feel tomorrow from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m., will be a potential peak time on the grid system. And anything that you can do to reduce your consumption during that time period, obviously will help reduce your costs in the next year after that, based upon the lower peak load contribution. This is especially important if you have like water authorities, places where you have higher demand levels that are potentially controllable, and we can walk through what those look like. But it can also be as simple as just turning the AC up 2 or 3 degrees, in City Hall for during those time periods. Or even send people home early, so they can get home and beat the heat. And then, finally, we actually have another online service called Energy Manager, which is where you can easily go in, access all of your billing information, all of your, historical usage, et cetera. That allows you to pull your contracts, look at current pricing, et cetera. So, there's a whole, we could do an hour just on the capabilities probably of Energy Manager, but, from that aspect, what we're trying to do is really, make sure through the MEA program and through our products and services that we're able to give you, everything you need to make informed decisions. Next slide. Pardon my drink there. Definitely trying to avoid the next call for you guys. So I talked about this a little bit already, but with our market watch system, we can set a target price for contract that you're looking for in the future, and then you're going to not have a surprise of where it is, where the market is versus that. So that could be either a soft trigger where you just get a notification of, hey, we hit your targets, or we can even put a hard trigger in place that would automatically execute. And that's available again. You do not have to be a current Constellation customer. We can look at contracts that end anytime between now and 2031. For pricing. So whatever you have out there, it's never too early to start looking at what the forward markets are. Next slide. So one other aspect that I wanted to discuss was the ability of customers, especially our municipal clients, are very interested in sustainability. Obviously, through the PA sustainability program through the Municipal League. With the different certifications, you get benefits if you are more green, and have different sustainability plans in place. As I talked about, Constellation fully supports and can even provide financing for, et cetera, if you're doing energy efficiency projects, et cetera. The one easy way for customers to reduce their carbon footprint is through the purchase of either carbon-free energy certificates or renewable energy credits. Historically, you've heard about renewable energy credits. So I'm actually going to ask you to drop to the next slide. We'll come back to this one. So traditionally, we've talked about renewable energy credits, which come from our wind or solar arrays throughout the country. So by purchasing these RECs, you're able to reduce your Scope 2 emissions associated with the electricity use, for your communities. So we have a large number of communities that purchase somewhere between, 10% to 100%, of their power to be offset by these renewable energy credits. Again, this allows you to support, the generation of Green certified renewable energy projects. When those projects come online, they're producing, two things. They're producing power that goes onto the grid system, and then they also have these renewable energy credits that they can then sell on the market as well to customers who aren't able to plug in directly to, that solar array or wind farm. So that allows you, to then have all the full claims of, how many, tons of carbon you were able to offset, through your support of the renewable energy, community. Now, another option that we have, Melissa, I'll ask you to go back up, is there's also been a growing demand for carbon-free power that's not necessarily renewable. So as Melissa had mentioned earlier, and Bill's talked about, with our clean energy centers, and the growing demand for carbon-free power. Our nuclear facilities can get a similar offtake from a REC that's called an EFEC, emission-free energy certificate. So they're defined by the Pennsylvania, or the PJM grid system, that come from generating sources that do not emit greenhouse gases from combustion. So again, you're able to make claims that you're offsetting your scope 2 emissions, and depending upon your sustainability commitments there for your community, this can be a lower cost option, for you to help offset some of that carbon footprint. And again, a lot of these would actually come, as opposed to the renewable energy credits, which are going to come from more of a national based, with so much of our nuclear generation here, kind of in the Mid-Atlantic region. You're actually more supporting, even some more local sources. So, we're happy to walk through the differences between those two products, anytime, and what would meet your GHG reporting protocols, et cetera. For your community to see if one of those makes sense. But again, it's a nice, relatively easy way to help offset carbon without having to put, solar panels on, in your community, which can be costly, and sometimes hard from a project perspective. So that's the information that we had today. Excuse me, I almost made it. I appreciate everybody's time. Obviously we have a few minutes left if there's any other questions or anything anybody wants to talk about. With that being said, I think, I appreciate that. Our contact information is on the screen.
We have
my
somebody
name's Matt.
We do have a
raise their
question.
hand.
Hi, Ken. See a hand raised by Ken Myers. Ken, you're gonna have to come off mute though.
So you said at the beginning your program is competitively bid. Does that mean we can sign up with you without having to bid these services on our own?
That is correct. So the Pennsylvania Municipal League, and Chris can speak to this if he prefers, but they go out for a competitive bid, with Constellation was proud to win. So it does meet all of your public bid requirements. So you can just sole source from that perspective.
Thank you.
And if you would like further information, I'm happy to provide you with the details. That's specifically why the league years ago implemented or started the Municipal Utility Alliance, was to assist the local municipality in getting a lower price and not having to go through the RFP process on their own.
Great question, and thank you for asking. But I'm happy to come out to any community. I live in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania. So we are, I'm happy to, like I said, to come out all over the state, all the time. But let me know, I can help. Happy to set up Teams calls or in-person meetings. And just really help guide you through what is looking to be probably a pretty volatile energy future here in the next, let's call it 5 years or so. With all the load growth, et cetera, as Bill talked about, and but we can manage through it, and we can try to make sure it's not too impactful to the community any more than it has to be.
Doesn't appear that we have any more questions. I'd like to thank Melissa, Matt, Bill, Very informative. And I'd encourage everyone to reach out to them if you have any more questions, any more detailed questions about the market. If you want more information on the Municipal Utility Alliance, you're welcome to reach out to me or to Matt Schwerdle directly. So thank you, everyone. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Constellation. Always enjoyed listening to you, so thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Chris.
Chris.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everybody.
Billy.